Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Jewelers Academy podcast. I'm Anna Campbell, your host this week, and I'm very excited to be joined by my friend Heidi Hinda Chadwick. Heidi is the mistress of the House of Erotic Aliveness, a writer, storyteller, and a trauma-informed artist and educator who believes that creativity is the revolution. Heidi works with creatives, visionaries, and entrepreneurs to create aligned safety and connection to your pleasure, to your magic, and your creativity. Welcome, Heidi.
Hi, Anna. Thank you so much. It's great to be back.
I know,
Yeah.
and this I do want to say. This is our second podcast together for Jewelers
Yeah.
Academy. We've also spoken about navigating your comfort zone, and I will link to that episode in the show notes. And that was a really popular episode. And we came out of that recording deciding to set up our own podcast. So we'll give it a little plug now.
Yeah.
We're now on season 3 of the Full of Ourselves podcast, which is for women entrepreneurs. So if you enjoy this conversation, then make sure you check it out, and I'll add the link to that in the show notes. And today we are going to talk about something that many of us struggle with, and that is comparison.
Mm.
Comparing ourselves, comparing our work, comparing our business, really, whatever kind of comes up for you around this idea of comparison, that's what we really wanted to delve into in this particular episode. And I'm just going to get started. We're going to just chat around this and our tips and our ideas and our own struggles with it as well. We're not saying there's some kind of enlightened being who knows everything about everything. We're just talking about the ways that we found that work for us. So
Mm.
I think my first point that I wanted to make was um, this ability to compare on such a global scale, to be able to see someone's jewelry, someone who's in a country that you'll never ever visit, you know, like to be able to see all of this, all of these creations, all of these businesses, all of these amazing artists. It is a brilliant thing. It is an amazing and a brilliant thing. It's a
Mm.
brilliant thing if you want to be in business and you want to sell and you want a global marketplace, but it can also be a very triggering thing.
Mm.
And we just wanted to kind of acknowledge that. And historically, we're probably the first generation, we are the first generation in human history that this has ever happened to, you know. And the opportunities that come for women, particularly, both of us talk, a lot about women in business and the historical issues around that. Historically, this is such a new thing for us, but it's also can be really overwhelming. So it's just something we wanted to acknowledge, wasn't it, Heidi?
Absolutely. And it is a double-edged sword completely. I'm very aware of how much I am inspired by other people's creativity and creative ideas. You have to excuse me. I'm having a bit of, I don't know if it's a hot flush or it's very unreasonably and unseasonably humid and muggy. We were just saying this before. I don't know where my fan is either.
It is very warm
Um,
in
yes,
the
so
UK at the
blowing,
moment, so we're
just having
both,
a little
and
bit of
we've
a
still got
blow.
windows closed so that yeah, we have windows closed so that the sound doesn't get affected, and we're all both in it. Both. It's fine.
A bit like this today. Those of you that can't, that are not actually watching this. Um, yeah, I love the fact of being really inspired. And it always also makes me think about that famous quote. I think it was Picasso that said this, called "Steal like an artist." And is it Austin Klein? Klein? I'm not quite sure how you pronounce his
Yeah,
surname. Has kind of run with that one. And it's very true in that, and this is a whole, I mean, this could be a whole debate, full stop. Are there any new ideas actually whatsoever? Or are we just continuously recycling other ideas and other inspirations and making them our own? Does that matter? I don't really know. I don't really care, to be honest, as long as we're really engaged and enjoying what we're doing. So there's always been that side of things. And so it can be good for that. But like you say, on the other side, it can it can be quite demoralizing. And I think a lot of that depends on how we're doing, the mood that we're in, if we're feeling okay in ourselves. It's the whole dilemma of social media, isn't it? I know what I was just saying before we hit record, actually, I'm going to have a bit of, I say, I'm going to have a bit of a social media detox this weekend and just focus on some creative things that I want to get on with. Um, so I think that is also important to acknowledge for ourselves. Do I have the capacity right now to go in and go into scrolling or go searching for inspiration around this, or to visit your maybe your favorite jewelry sites? Am I in that space to receive the inspiration? Or am I feeling a little bit tapped out, a bit exhausted, maybe a little bit small today, whatever, where actually it's just going to make you furiously and violently jealous and decide that you're rubbish? I have to say, though, and this is like a really random thing, the amount of times I will go to things, whether it's like, I shouldn't say this, but it's true, artists like open studios, or even last week, a friend of and I went to see a performer at the Fringe Festival in Manchester. And I'm not saying who it is or anything. And we were both looked at each other. We're both writers and performers. And we were like, this is how not to do it. So there's sometimes there can be that side of things as well, the comparison that makes us go, wow, they've got a show. They're doing it, which I always think anyone who creates anything is incredible. It's fantastic. You're putting yourself out there. That's a win-win, full stop. But sometimes it can remind us that actually we're pretty okay. We're really good. Keep going. So there is that as well, you know.
You know what? I love that. And actually, that happened to me. I was at a conference recently and it was amazing. And there were some brilliant speakers. I went to some great talks and I went to one where, and again, I'm not going to name names or anything like that.
Yeah.
No, I don't even know if I'll remember the name, but I was like, oh, okay. You know, this is somebody who has got onto this really quite big stage. And their message is not maybe it's
Mm,
not for me, but it wasn't that great. It wasn't that well delivered. And I was like, oh, okay. This, there's something here that goes, okay, maybe I am ready for this, and I am ready for this kind of stage because I could definitely rock it. So I think that's a really interesting point. It's like a lot of times when we're talking about comparison, we're comparing up. We're like, "Oh my god, this
yeah.
person who's an artist and who's just, the best creator ever of this type of jewelry," or
Mm.
whatever it is that we're creating, whether it's a business, whether it's a piece, whatever, we're looking up. But actually sometimes, I'm not saying we should do it all the time and that we should degrade other people. I'm not talking about that, but sometimes we do need to look at everything that's out there and we can find a place that we are. And I think what can happen is we're like, well, if that person's so amazing, what is my place? But
Mm,
we all have a place. We are all creatives. It isn't that
yeah.
there's one place to buy food in the world. There's not one place to buy anything. There are different there are different types of foods. There are different budgets of food. It's the same when it
Yeah.
comes to something like jewelry or anything that we're doing. I
Yeah.
think we need to remember
There's
that.
there's a lot of this is it comes down to that lack mentality, isn't it? Which we all can carry. And I do often fall into that trap, and I have to really check myself and do my practices and things to bring me back into my center again. Of and it comes down to not enough. I'm not enough, or there's not enough space for me. My voice is not enough, my creativity is not enough. It's a really good one, those of you that are listening, to just very kindly just sit with that and go, is this running through me? Or where is this running through me? And to know that it's pretty much universal. Well, I say universal, particularly in the Western society, just because of how our culture has been put together in a very wrong way. Um, but the comparison is that we compare and we decide, like you say, usually, therefore, we are not enough in who we are. And when it comes to creativity, it's a really interesting thing, isn't it? Because how can we, it's almost a bit, how the hell can we go creativity or creativity is not enough? Like, who are we to be the ones that judge creativity when it's the most
Yeah.
extraordinary, bizarre thing that just appears? I always call our imagination magic in action because it is, isn't it? You get this idea, then you're creating this extraordinary piece of jewelry or an idea, or you're creating this story or whatever it is, movie, or I just get blown away by that's come from our imagination, the input that we're receiving in. But how can we? Who are we? to judge. We all do, just like what we both said about judging someone getting up or speaking or performing, whatever we all do. And I think that's another thing. If you're putting yourself out there and living as an artist, being a creator, setting up your jewelry business or whatever it is, there is no way to escape the fact that you will be judged. And that also means that you're going to judge others. I think it's just something we have to just go, okay, I'm always probably going to fall into comparison every now and then. I'm probably also going to fall into, oh, I'm better than them every now and then. And people are going to think that about me. And rather than having to do necessarily anything about that, this is just how it is. As soon as we risk putting ourselves out there, that's just how it is. And kind of making peace with that and actually just getting on with what we're doing being the most important thing. Because at the end of the day, there is that quote, isn't there? Comparison is a thief of joy.
Yeah.
Comparison is the thief of joy. And
Yeah.
that is, isn't it surely we're doing the things that we do because we love it? We're passionate about
Yeah.
it. It gives us pleasure. It makes us feel good. We get into that state of flow. That's really important. It feeds something in us. And then there's something really gorgeous at the end of it. And maybe we even make a living out of what we're doing that we love doing. How incredible. But as soon as we start looking outside of ourselves to give this sense of our own worth, then we're in trouble. We're actually betraying our own self and denying our own joy. But it's not always easy just to stay in that lane, though.
I think that's the balance, isn't it? I think it's that balance between being inspired and being in that place and ready to share what we're doing and share our creativity and feeling overwhelm and that feel of lack of like, oh, I'm not good enough, I haven't done enough, this isn't enough, I am not enough, all of those feelings that can come up from it. And I think I'm interested in the fact that you're going to, taking your social media detox for a little bit, because I think when we can do that, no, but I think when we can do that, if we know
Yeah.
ourselves enough that we're in that place where it's like, no, right, I'm not in the right headspace to be going into this. We know that social media and all of this has been designed by some very, very clever people to make
Mm,
it addictive. That's what it
mm,
is. And if we as creatives can use it as inspiration and as a way to connect with other creatives, and when we need to, we can take a step away and just feed our own creativity,
mm.
then we're using that behemoth and that monster in exactly not the way they want it to be used. And I think that's the kind of subversive side of it. Do you know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. And also the thing that's coming to me as well, which a friend of mine said recently, and I really liked it as a phrase. It also means that we come back to our close to ourselves. We come back close to ourselves. So, it's very noisy, the world, isn't it? There's a lot of distractions, a lot of busyness. And when we get caught up in that, it's really hard to hear ourselves. And when we're creative, we need to be able to listen into ourselves. We need to know where that next inspiration is coming from, or if we're stuck on something, or a problem or a challenge in what we're doing. We need to be able to come close to ourselves again. And there's such a lovely phrase. I've started to kind of take that, and I think as any artist, it is one of the most important things that we do that.
Mhm.
I'm really curious about your relationship to you're smiling now. Like, how are you? Like, do you get, because I get so fiercely, the green eyed, I mean, it's a jealousy thing, but that's comparison is coming from that. I'm curious, do you get that at all? Do I not see
I
that?
think everyone must, certainly at times,
Very
and
political.
it's particularly. I think it's particularly when we're wanting more for ourselves. So,
Yeah.
in times where we're looking to move and to build and to grow and whatever that might look like, it can be really difficult not to end up looking at those people who are that step ahead that you want to that you want to emulate and be like, "Oh, I'm so jealous." And I think comes into another point that I want to make around jealousy. And I think if we can take that step back from that and see a jealousy almost as a treasure map to what we want.
Yes.
So when we can see
Mm,
someone is triggering us, something is triggering us, if we can take a step back and it's like, what about this person or this jewelry or this artwork or this business? What is it that's triggering me here? Because that is something that I want and I think I don't have. And it might be we do
yeah.
have it, but we're just judging ourselves harshly on that. But I think actually in this case, if we can do that, and sometimes we need to give ourselves that for a moment of that emotion moment. We need to give ourselves that green-eyed monster moment. But if we can take that and take that step back and go, what is it about this that I want? And then take that further and say, right, I'm not going to emulate that person. I'm not going to copy that person, but how can I put
Mm,
my spin on that?
mm,
How can I go after that? How can
yeah.
I do that in my own way? And then we're taking back that control because I think comparison is often about giving the focus onto someone else.
It's
And
losing our
it's not.
power.
And it's back to what you just said about keeping it closer to ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I love the treasure map idea. And
Yeah.
it is, isn't it? It's just a matter of just that shift from going, oh, to, oh, wow. Okay, what is it? What is it that they have? Or what is it showing me that's important
Yeah.
to me or I'd like to aspire to? So we use it to aspire towards rather than to beat ourselves up. But there's another aspect to this as well. These are just ideas. Those of you that are listening, um, you might want to play with these as ideas. But if we're comparing ourselves and seeing ourselves lacking as somebody else or seeing ourselves as not enough, we could play with, well, what if we're the one that other people are looking at and comparing themselves and seeing themselves lacking? What is
Mhm.
unique about who we are, what we do, our point of view, the way that we come across? Um, all the things that maybe we look out at others at. Maybe, we look at others and go and love their branding or love the way that they're effortless on social media or their style or whatever it is. It's not necessarily always just what they're creating. It could be everything around that.
Yeah.
So taking all this aspect around running your business and going, well, what's unique to me? What might others, or what even have others said? Because we tend to ignore that. Maybe they've gone, oh my God, I absolutely love your logo. It's so cool. Or I love the way you come across. I love listening to you, or, whatever it might be. And we often will just go, oh, thank you, and then just get on with looking to see what's wrong with us. Whereas actually starting to look at or go, oh wow, this is you. This is a superpower. I call it a superpower of mine in this. It's unique to me.
Yeah.
And that is really, really helpful to kind of fill ourselves back up again as well. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's such a good point. Actually, just propping up my webcam right now is my "Everything Works Out for Me" journal, and it's a notebook that I have. I'm nearly finished this notebook. I'm really excited about that because I've been
Mm,
like writing in it, and it
gorgeous.
basically every time, even just something really small, I just something that works out for me. Someone says something nice, someone, I just make sure I write it down because our brain, we know it looks for the negative, it has a negativity bias, and so we have to outweigh that. And so, I talk about it in terms of it's lots of different things, but could also be that. I've just today actually I got sent some amazing 5-star reviews for my workshops that I hadn't seen. And I
Yes.
was like, "Oh, this," and
Oh,
people have been writing this stuff about me over the last few months, and I hadn't seen them. And it's just so nice to think, oh my goodness, there's all of this kind of energy that's coming to me
oh, that's
from
so
them. And I love
beautiful.
that.
Oh, so you know what? It reminds me of something as well, because those of you that are not aware of, Anna and I have been coaching each other for quite a while now as well.
Yeah.
And one of the things you reminded me, one of the things from, I don't know if it was last year, maybe even the year before, that you shared with me, and it's just coming back to me now from what you've said, is of making, like maybe getting a cork board or something and making, printing out what, like, the good reviews or the testimonials or the good feedback, and having them somewhere where you can see them. And actually, there's something about doing that as an actual real thing rather than going, oh, I'll make a Pinterest board or I'll do something in my.
Yeah.
No, have it where you can actually see it on your desk or in your kitchen or something, and you can read them every day. So you can see that, because you just reminded me as well. I've got beautiful testimonial from a few days ago of an old client in my membership who's completely and utterly, through that membership, devoted to her life now and her artistry to doing her puppets, these life-size incredible puppets. And she sent me her show that she's just done, and also just these gorgeous words that it wouldn't have happened without my guidance. And I know it's such a like out of the blue thing and really touched me. And I actually had kind of, even though I screenshot it, I'd forgotten. So I think I'm going to start applying this actually. There's another thing about comparison, which is very interesting, is, are we using, so this is a good question, are we using our little drama rama around comparison to avoid, as an excuse not to actually take the steps or to go do the thing or take action upon the thing that we want to do? And that might be a bit of a harsh question, but more and more I'm understanding, I'm looking at my own self in this, but I'm understanding how much these are very real feelings that we get, but how many of these can be our own self-saboteur coming in already. Or maybe we've already started. It'll still come in going, oh, you're not enough, or they're better, for us to put everything down. So to see this as, is this a sabotaging pattern in me to get so locked into
Yeah.
comparing, is really great to notice, because then we have a choice, and choice is where our power lives.
Oh, that is such a great point, because I think it can be that, can't it? And it can really derail. It can really properly derail something that is going really, really well, and that negative brain is going, "Oh no, quit!" The sabotage comes in, and that can look. You've talked about self sabotage before on our podcast, but that can look very different for different kinds of people. So I remember, is it the three P's that you talk about for the
Oh, yeah, yeah,
sabotage? Do you wanna just
yeah.
go into those? Because I think that's nice.
Yeah, in my mind, they look very cute, the three Ps. They've got those little googly eyes on them, and they look quite sweet. However, no, these are all they actually kind of form part of shame. And shame is the big way where we stop ourselves from showing up in the world. We hide who we are. So a lot of the comparison, the impact of comparison that we've been talking about actually sends us into shame, or it's rooted in shame. But the three Ps are perfectionism. It's a big one, isn't it, for a lot of us? People pleasing. You've got to do it like this way. It's got to look this. I can't, make get anyone's disapproval or disappointment. And procrastination. Our friend procrastination. I'm just gonna sort out this cupboard before I actually sit down and get on with my business plan or get into the studio today or whatever. They're the three Ps that we can start to notice where they show up in our lives. Again, they're all guaranteed places of procrastination. But one of the things that's very interesting, I am still very rooting a lot of my work and studying a lot to do with how the nervous system impacts creatives. So a lot of my work is around this, is to actually understand more and more that it's not our fault if we get stuck in procrastination loops or we can't get out of people pleasing or perfectionism. It's actually what our nervous system has been living in order to survive. And when we realize that, and that was a huge thing for me, it's like, okay, that's why I can try, I can read all the books, I can listen to all the podcasts like ours, right? We're not telling you how to get out of comparison. We're just wanting to explore that here and how it can impact you, give you more awareness. But to know that that's why those things aren't working, is because it's not just I'm lazy or all those kind of things. It could literally be that the very structure, the foundation of how your nervous system is stopping you from doing the thing that you really want to do, purely out of an old pattern, predictive pattern of what's going to happen. And for me, knowing that has been really life changing, because you can go, oh, wow, okay, right, that's set. But now I'm different. I really do want this. So let's see what I can change. What practices can I put into place? So I think that's it's
Yeah,
it's
I
a big
think
thing.
yeah, and I think that's one of the key kind of tips for this is as you're listening, think about, where does the comparison happen for you? Is there a particular thing that tends to trigger you? Is there something going on there? Is jealousy your treasure map? Like, what can you learn from that? What is it that that means that you want and that you feel like you don't have right now? Are you wrong? Do you have it? And is that just your brain kind of giving you that message, or is this something you're working towards? And how can you do that and put your own spin on it? But also, where do you procrastinate? What happens? What are your patterns? How can you notice it? So I think
Yeah.
for a lot of people, it's kind of like it's unconscious. It just happens, and you just kind of spiral down, and you're in it, and you're there, and you're kind of stuck. It's noticing pattern as our first thing to
Yeah.
do, and then I think it can be, we can pull ourselves out by doing one thing that's brave, that that's
Mm.
saying no, I'm not doing that. It could be a social media post. It could be, I'm going to start a new piece, or I'm going to stop buying gemstones and start using the gemstones. That is too common.
Oh, no, that applies to all crafts, doesn't it? Yes.
Buying craft supplies and using the craft supplies
You're
to
called
complete
out.
several hobbies. Calling you out on that, everyone, because we're all, we all feel this one. Um,
Yeah.
so what one thing can you do? It's not that you have to plan to do some major thing. You don't have to create a whole new signature style. You don't have to create a whole new collection. What
Mm.
is one thing you can do to just pull yourself out? Because I think sometimes you're communicating with your brain. You're like, nope, we're not going down that path anymore. This is
Yeah.
where we're going. One brain
I
message.
love that. I love that. It's like that one step at a time, that next moment, the next moment, and I love it. And also not to give yourself a hard time if you find yourself dropping into a comparison well. To go, "Oh, well, I'm in this. Oh, well, I'm in the well." It's okay. It's called being human. I can't imagine anyone. I'd love it if there was like almost like this gossip book of all the icons of creativity that we love and like all the petty. I mean, I think there are, aren't there? There are often kind of these like letters that are found. That one's bitching about that one, and that one's not got anything good to say about that one. And the comparison or the dramatics around I'm no good and this is terrible. And it kind of probably help us and actually taking down from this like pedestal of actually if I am a real artist or real craftsperson, then I don't ever experience this. And it's not true. There's one other thing I wanted to share actually around this as well, because I think the comparison thing is I see it as a real shadow aspect of how we are as women in society. And I mean, I'm kind of assuming most of your people listening to this are women. I don't know, so I apologize if that assumption
Not
is
all,
incorrect.
but a majority.
Yeah, majority. There is something
Mm.
about, we see it in those kind of crappy magazines. We see it in just how it all kind of seems to play out in the media and everything as well. Of there is a sense of let's pit women against each other, let's compare them. And that comparison means that we become suspicious of each other. We try and one up each other. Everything becomes a competition. Everything is the comparison of who's, more this, more that, looks this, looks that, and so on. And what it does is it creates separation between us as women. And, when women come together, there's a lot of power. We have a whole lot of power there. So if this is going on for you in your life, and you'll feel this comparison a lot, just to sit again with a real curiosity around, okay, if this is dividing me, because actually, when instead of comparison, what if we're in collaboration? What if we're in co creation? What if we're in more community where we lift each other up, we support each other, we celebrate
Yeah.
what somebody else is doing? How might that impact? How does that feel if I feel into that more than the, oh my God, no, they're doing that. And oh, I had that idea a while ago. Well, that one looks better than I've done it, all that, and all this kind of thing. feeling the difference to what that is. Is it easy? Some people find that easy. For me, as someone, like I say, gets jealous a lot, not always. Um, but it is a really beautiful thing to think about. Actually, how can we
Mm,
support each other more rather than being comparison? Go, wow, look at
yeah.
their stuff, isn't it amazing? It's not taking away anything
Yeah.
from yourself.
Yeah, definitely. I've got written down on my notes here, her win or his win isn't my loss. And I think
Mm,
that's the key, isn't it? Because someone else does well, someone else is achieving. this- How I think you're right. There's been this idea about comparison of like someone is better, inherently better than someone else, or and it's a competition, but actually this is, in this respect, is not a competition because we can all win. We
yeah,
can all do what we do, and we can share what we could do, and we can support each other. I buy quite a lot of jewelry actually from friends. As someone who makes jewelry, you
yeah,
might think, oh, that's a bit strange, but I tend to buy a lot of jewelry from people that I but who
yeah.
have a style that's very different to me, that I wouldn't make, that I admire, that I love, and I'm forever looking out for new things, for new styles, and for new ideas and for new people to support, you know,
Yeah,
and and I
great.
think that's a key thing. I think a lot of times when we're in a particular industry, we're following lots of people from that industry. And so our view of it suddenly becomes like it's everything in front of our eyes. Everyone and what everyone's doing is in front of our eyes. But actually, that's not how other people are consuming the world. They've got their own biases and their own things that they're looking at. But this idea of her win or his win isn't my loss, I
I
think
love
is
that.
an important one, because I think it comes back to that jealousy thing again, doesn't it? It's like, God
Yeah,
damn, I wish that had happened to
yeah,
me, or I wish, it's like, well, why can't it?
yeah,
Why can't it?
yeah,
That's what I want.
yeah. I love it.
Mm,
Great. And it's just it's food for thought because, as Anna mentioned right at the beginning, we're still working with all of this stuff. This will impact us. And probably, I'm guessing, the bigger that you grow in your work, in your visibility, in your exposure, in your business, you probably that gets stronger as well because then there's almost like a higher risk around things than that comparison coming in. I can't imagine that necessarily goes away in that way. It's how do we hold that, and does it um, mean that we move away from or turn away from our own greatness or our own genius or our own creative expression? And my hope for any of you that are listening is that it really, really doesn't. It just makes you go, oh yeah, I'm human. Okay, let me shake this off. Let me see what actually it can show me so that I can grow more and more and strengthen more and more my own unique expression and voice.
yes. And I think this kind of comes into something that I've written down, which is about, we're not behind. And I think a lot of times when we're making that comparison, we're looking at somebody who's a bit more advanced. So that, there's a couple of things here.
Mhm.
One on social media, firstly, we could be comparing against somebody who's had a career that's much longer than ours, that has a
Yeah,
lot more
yeah,
experience of us, that we can be making a comparison in that particular way. But we have our own unique skills, our own priorities, our own energy, and we're not behind. We're exactly where we need to be. And what we need to do is just keep, it's like that thing again you said about the one step at a time.
yeah.
One of the things in the coaching that I do, that like we call it turtle steps. Like, what is the tiniest little step? What is the
Love
tiniest
it.
movement you can keep making forwards? It doesn't have to. Sometimes it's big jumps and it's big leaps, but actually, what is real progress creatively is sometimes that tiny little movement every single day, and that's what's going to get you there.
I absolutely love that. And thank you. Just reminding me as well, one other thing is, this is what happens when Anna and I talk. It's like more and more ideas come out. This is really important. Going all the way back to what we started with actually with the social media is you do not see, it's that thing of the overnight success, isn't it? You do not see the hours, days, years of grafting, the mistakes that happen, the failures, the sobbing on the floor, that I can't do this, the nervous breakdowns, the all of that, the staying with and not giving up, all of that, we do not see. It's like the iceberg. We do not see the what's underneath the iceberg. And that is really, really important. At the end of the day, we don't
Yeah.
know what someone else's journey has been, just as someone doesn't know ours. And I think holding that in mind is also really important, um, rather than just kind of going on that very face judgment around something. It's actually like there's a whole story here. There's a whole person with a life here. And actually humanizing all of that a lot more, I think, can really help to temper the comparison as well, because it just
Yeah.
reminds us that every single one of us is on our own individual journey. And that, how can we compare that when we look at it that way, rather than
Yeah.
taking a single snapshot?
Yeah, that's so true. Absolutely. And generally, I mean, not everyone, and think this is changing, but generally people share their highlights, the best bits,
That's it.
they
Yeah.
don't share all of the iterations of a piece of jewelry that went wrong. They
Yeah.
share the best things. And now a lot more people are sharing a little bit more of their kind of backstory and things that are happening. And one thing I heard, which I don't know, I'm going off on a tangent here probably, but I found as a really interesting thing is if you are ready to share a little bit more about what you have gone through and what a creative project has gone through, all of that. I heard this great thing, which was share the scar, not the wound.
Yeah.
Have I mentioned that one to you before? I think I have.
Yeah. I think I might have mentioned that to you actually. Yes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I've heard a few people talk about this, and
Yeah.
this is the idea that you when you are ready to share. So once something's happened, maybe you've had loads of problems making a particular collection, and here it is, and it's there, and you now have the space to talk about all the things that went wrong, because of that. But sometimes it might be. I mean, you may not want to share private stuff, and that is
Yeah. I don't have
absolutely
to.
fine. I
Yeah.
don't think you don't need to have that coming out on your socials, on your website, whatever. You don't necessarily need to share all of that. That's not necessary. But I think we do connect with real people. And in this age of AI, particularly, I think we're connecting even more and we're noticing even more real people. So being able to share a little bit about who we are, maybe a bit about what we've been through. It doesn't have to necessarily be the focus, but it could be what we've been through, because it helps us to connect as humans. And I think that's kind of a part of it. So I'm just adding that in as a little extra thing. Um, so I don't know if is there anything else you wanted to say about that before I move on to my next bit on my notes.
No, I think that's
I've got
yeah,
something
yeah.
here
Go
around um what often happen, I think this is something that is really key that we can talk a little bit around, is that when we're looking at comparison, what tends to happen is that we are looking externally for validation of who we are and what we're doing.
Oh, that's a great point.
It's difficult because when we're in business, we're going to be looking externally for validation for what we do, because we want sales, we want people to work with us, we want commissions, whatever that might be. So there's going to be an element of that external validation. A bit like I just said about, the 5-star reviews. It was awesome. It was so nice to have them and great. And the same for the one that you just had as well, Heidi. It's amazing to have that. But I think if we are always looking out for
Yeah.
that validation, that's where comparison and all of this can become and the procrastination that goes along with it can become a real issue, I think.
I love how you've said that. It's exactly that. And it's it's where we've identified, it comes back to identities, where we've identified ourselves as, or what we're doing, or um, as the artist or whatever it might be. And that is very dangerous when we fix our identity around something, because that's where we're sourcing our worth from. And so it's absolutely like you say, we're going to need those hits. We're going to need those fixes. And it's really worth asking ourselves again, and I've had to do this. It's very can be very painful. Um, am I identifying what I do or my career or what I make or whatever it is with my worth? And actually, a lot of us probably most of us, if we're honest, if we look at certain things, the honest answer might be, yeah, I am. And again,
Yeah.
it's okay. Like you said before, the first step in anything is having the awareness, because as soon as we see something, it's like we've created a little bit of space. We're not necessarily suddenly fused by. I mean, and you just have to look out into, I don't know, celebrity or any of those kind of big famous people in whatever. Their identity and their worth are just tied into a thousand million knots together. And you can see how dangerous that can be if you suddenly are not, cool anymore, or you're not in the spotlight anymore. And a sense of, well, who am I? Don't know. Yeah, this is a really big thing around that, the validation thing. And also, it comes back to, again, the only comparison we really need to be aware of is with ourselves. That's the comparison. Am I growing? Am I improving in my own craft? I love doing that. I love looking back. And I've been doing that
Yeah.
recently to, like, the stuff I was writing a year ago. And actually, I can really see the progression since I've been consistent a lot more. And I love that. It makes me want to give myself a pat on the back. I feel really proud of myself. I'm committing to what I want to do. That's the comparison we need to our own self.
Yes. Yes. I've seen that question of would I change places with myself a year ago? And if you wouldn't, then that means that things have moved on, and that there's
Love
growth,
that.
and that you have changed, and you have learned, and you're doing something new. And I think that's such a good point, isn't it? It's we're comparing out in the wrong places. We're
Yeah.
not comparing with who we are becoming. We're not comparing with our past
Yeah.
iterations of ourself. And I think that's a really, really good point to make.
Yeah.
And I
And on
think
the back of that,
mm,
then to validate ourselves, to go, wow,
yeah,
well done. Nice. Go and take yourself out for a nice dinner or treat yourself to something or other. Just that real, like, rewarding ourselves, I think, is really important as well. Otherwise, it's just
yeah,
continuous, keep going, keep going, keep going, looking out, looking at, oh my God, they're moving on, they're moving on. Of course. So there's something about that pausing to acknowledge where we've come, how far we've come, that comparison for self. And then we often talk about this, boast about it, feel it, be proud, celebrate that moment, celebrate it.
yeah.
This is where we get our sense of worth, when we celebrate and own what we're accomplishing ourselves. It's so important to do that.
I think what's important is that we're looking at defining success on our own terms.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so sometimes, that jealousy, that thing that we see from someone else, okay, all we need to do is go, that's important to me. I'm going to add it to my list, and I'm going to do it in my own way. And I
Yeah,
think what has happened very much in the world is that, things have moved on. The things that we were taught were important when we were younger, around getting a job for life, working 9 to 5, getting promoted, getting our pension, all of that has really very much evolved and moved on. Particularly, again, we're
yeah,
talking about a very Western culture here. I'll add that in. But sometimes what we would have seen as being success in the past is not what success means for us now. And so being able to actually
yeah.
continue to add to what that means to us, and to live that, I mean, then people are, like you say, people are gonna want to look at us and go, oh, I wish I had their life.
Yeah, or if we're all doing that, no one's looking out anyone else doing that, because everyone's just living their
Mm,
life and enjoying themselves. There's that
yes.
kind of goes out the window. I think that's a huge thing. I think that's a huge thing to acknowledge. Mm.
Yeah. And I just got one last little bit, which I thought we've kind of touched on, but I love this way of thinking about it, which I think came from you. And that comparison versus inspiration is
Yeah.
where are you lit up by it, and where are you dimming? Where's your light dimmed by it? And I think this is something that you mentioned to me before, because again, it's It's around that inquiry about ourselves, I think, isn't it? It's around
Yeah.
what we see and what's important to us.
Yeah. I never want to, in some ways, just to kind of, I think it's the last thing I want to say here, really thinking about it now, comparison is, in some ways, is extraordinary because how do I know if I am getting better in what I'm doing in some ways? So taking out the kind of the charge around it, or the emotion, all the stories around better or worse. Interestingly, thinking about it, there is a sense of actually by comparing in a very kind of like neutral way, it can help me to learn more, to refine, to know where I need to ask for help or go and do some more workshops or trainings or um what brings out it's almost like it makes me think of the fact that we're always in relationship to everything in our life. And it's that relationship that gives us that mirror back. And it's not always the kind of negative stuff. It can also kind of really show us there's something about really showing where we are, that we can stand alongside and go, okay, so that's amazing in that. And wow, I'm really curious about that. How do you do it? Wow, that's incredible. You took a risk. All these things that we were talking about. So actually, I want to big up comparison and just suddenly realizing maybe there's a side of it that's actually really useful to keep us from continuing to grow. Otherwise, we're just going to be delusional in some ways.
Yeah. I mean, there's good delusional, I think, as well.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, listen, it's all delusional. Might as well just choose the best delusion to live in. That's what I think.
Exactly. I think that's the thing about negative thoughts. If negative thoughts are there and they're not true, so why aren't we thinking about the positive, the what's next, the delusion? I mean,
Absolutely. Yeah.
I'm all for that. Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Heidi. I really appreciate it. Where can people follow you and find out more about what you do?
Great question. So, probably the easiest way, the place that I really like to hang out is on Instagram, and that's at Heidi Hinda. I'm also over at Substack, which right this second now, as I'm recording this, I'm changing the name of that. So I will be over at Substack. You can
We'll
get all
make
that
sure we have
information
the
at
right links.
Instagram. Yeah. Or Anna will have the links put down at the bottom here as well. And I also have a
Yeah,
website, which again
absolutely.
is changing to the House of Erotic Aliveness. So that information will be down here by the time this episode comes out. So a bit useless, but Heidi Hinder is my Instagram place. So come and say hello, come and hang out. And I look forward to seeing you there. And thank you so much. I have so enjoyed this conversation, as
Yes,
always, with you, Anna.
absolutely. Okay, well, let me put a bit of just last thing about our podcast in here. So, if you have enjoyed this episode and our conversation, check out the Full of Ourselves podcast for women in business. More of the same kind of thing. And we have 12 episodes in seasons 1 and 2 ready for you to binge, another 6 episodes in season 3. So, check out at Full of Ourselves podcast on Instagram. The website is fullofourselvespod.com, and again, I'll put the links everywhere. And also do follow me as well. I'm at Anna C Campbell on Instagram. That's where you'll find me most. But thank you again for all that you've shared today, Heidi. That was so brilliant and so helpful.
Pleasure. Thank you.